Carl Gallups is a former Florida law enforcement officer with experience as a decorated deputy sheriff in two different counties and a career with the Florida Department of Corrections. He also is a 25-year pastor of a large Baptist church on the Gulf Coast. He thinks of himself as a constitutional minister, author of the best-selling book Magic Man in the Sky, a 10-year veteran host of conservative talk radio, and a longtime member of the Board of Regents with the University of Mobile, Alabama. Carl is the founder of the world-famous and viral YouTube God and Country Biblical Apologetics channel, PP Simmons. The channel, in just a few short years, has amassed over 23 million views and 20,000 subscribers. Carl is a highly sought-after Tea Party speaker and a nationally recognized expert commentator on the birther and Social Security controversies of Barack Obama. He's visited with us before. Carl Gallups, welcome back to the Global Freedom Report. How are you, Carl?
Brent Johnson, I'm doing well. I'm so honored to be back with you. God bless you, my brother.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. What exactly does it mean to be a constitutional minister?
Well, you know, it shouldn't be such a difficult concept for people to grasp these days, but unfortunately it is. I know that you're throwing me a softball because I know that you know what it means, but for those that are struggling with that concept, it means that I'm following in the footsteps of so many of our founding fathers, the black-robed regiment they were called, those pastors who loved the kingdom of God, who preached the gospel of Jesus first and foremost, but who understood that we have been given a special gift from God in the constitutional republic of the United States of America, because it is that constitutional republic that gives us the ability to preach the gospel in freedom, to share the gospel in freedom, to take the gospel to the ends of the world, which is our command, in freedom, without having our heads cut off, without having our property seized, without having to go to jail. So, as a pastor, I love this nation, I love our constitutional republic, and I am doing my best to defend it and to restore our constitutional republic, which is being snatched away from us, Brent.
Amen to that. Let me ask you our question of the week, which I'm asking our listeners, because I'd like your opinion on it. Do you believe there's going to be a war with Iran? And if so, who's going to start it and when?
Yeah. Well, you know, the scriptures, if I understand them correctly, tell us that eventually Iran, which is called Persia in Ezekiel 38 and 39, will join forces with Russia, which is called Gog and Magog. And by the way, that treaty was signed in 1991 between Russia and Iran, which enables them to Russia to defend Iran from the West and Russia to give nuclear arms to Iran. The only deal was Iran would make sure that Islamization did not come to the Bilo-Russian states, and they've both kept their agreement, and so now we see this biblical joining of these two nations, and Iran, of course, is desiring to go to war with Israel and the United States. So the Bible tells us that war will eventually come, but you know something, Brent? So yes, there is going to be a time when Iran will attack Israel according to the Word of God. But we might be, right now, in the short term, rather than an outbreak of war, and I don't have any special revelation on this, but we might be getting ready to watch an outbreak of peace, Brent. And what I mean by that is, I also know that the Scriptures tell us that just before it gets really, really bad, there will come a person upon the scene whom the whole world will look to. He will come promising peace and prosperity and will seem to have the answers to a world that is just about to exterminate itself. So we live in some interesting times. We live in some very prophetic times, Brent.
We have a very educated, informed listening audience, and from our chat room, we have a question specifically for you. Is your ministry a 501c3 tax-exempt organization?
Thank you for asking that. Actually, it is, and I am willing to go either way. I've been the senior pastor there 26 years, and it was when I came there, and I have never led our church to take away that status, although I would be glad to. But the deal is, what a lot of people don't realize, They look at my ministry and they see my radio work and my writing and my blogging, and they say, how can you do this with a 501c and you're never challenged? Our church is involved. I'm involved. The reason is because being a 501c does not prohibit you from being actively engaged in the political process. About the only thing that you cannot do is you cannot stand in the pulpit on a Sunday morning in a worship service and select a particular candidate and endorse one singular candidate and then ask your people to raise money for that candidate. In other words, you cannot use the worship service as a political action committee. But other than that, under 501c, you can speak to any issue you wish. You can speak to generalizations of all the candidates. You can even have political forums in your church as long as you invite all of the candidates that are participating. There's so much you can do under a 501c. So yes, we still are, but we're always willing to relinquish it if it means that for some reason we can't be activists. But as you can see, we are very, very active, and so am I.
And so a couple things. First, it's 501c3, just for clarification.
Yeah.
But 501c3...
I'm sorry, I probably misspoke.
No problem. My understanding, and that's interesting, because my understanding is you are prohibited from political speak. And you're saying that's not the case in terms of your radio broadcasts and all of that. That's interesting. I will say that I know many of my listeners will feel this way, so I'm going to speak on their behalf here, okay, that on some level what you're doing is you're asking the Internal Revenue Service for a benefit. That's what you are doing. And the Internal Revenue Service is clearly working against the interests and the freedom of the American people. And so there are going to be allegations of hypocrisy that come forward with that. And I would invite you to
speak to that.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a chance to speak to that, but I'm also going to invite you to re-examine whether or not, and I understand the reasons for it. The reasons for having the 501c3 are so that your contributors can get tax deductions, but on some level that promotes and supports the status quo, and the status quo is the whole problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, listen, I respect people if they have that view, and as I said, I'm more than willing to relinquish it, but it's never been raised in the 26 years I've been there because it's never been a problem. However, what it does, what am I trying to say? It does exempt you from property tax status, and it does exempt you, of course, from, it does enable you to ask for tax-free donations and giving. Now, but as far as any kind of compromise, so far I've not been faced with any compromise whatsoever, because I was in law enforcement for 10 years. I'm a senior pastor for 26 years. I've been to every legal forum. We've had lawyers and constitutional lawyers. We've had pastor legal forums explain to us the ins and outs and ups and downs. The bottom line is, I've got political signs in my yard. I give to political candidates, individual political candidates. I get on the radio. I represent myself as a pastor of a church. I speak my political mind. I speak out against anything that I wish politically, and there's not a thing that anyone can do. 501c has nothing to do with any of that. The only thing that 501c does, it says, look, if we're not going to tax you, if we're not going to tax your facilities and properties, if we're not going to tax the money you give, then you should not be able to take that tax-exempt status and stand in the pulpit on a Sunday morning and say, let's raise $100,000 for candidate X with this tax-free money, and we're going to support a singular candidate. I understand that. To me, that's fair. That's a fair exchange. But what a lot of people misunderstand, they think that 501c somehow causes you to have to compromise speaking your political mind. And my people will tell you, I don't compromise at all. I speak to abortion, to homosexuality, to corruption in government. I call names. I speak about Obama's atrocities. I've spoke of George Bush's atrocities. I speak from the pulpit freely.
And
the only thing that 501...
If the IRS decides they want to shut you down, I guarantee you they will use
No.
that against you.
No, not under the law. They can't. The only thing the law prohibits, Brent. This is what I'm trying to explain. As again, I've said for a quarter of a century, I have immersed myself in understanding what the law is. The only thing the law prohibits, I cannot endorse a singular candidate on behalf of the church, nor can I raise money for a singular candidate on behalf of the church, particularly in a worship service setting. But other than that, I can do almost, I mean, you name it, we can do it politically. Listen, we've registered people to vote. We've put political campaign literature and signs out in the foyer for people to pick up on their way out. We've introduced political candidates from the pulpit. And you can do all of that. There's nothing illegal with anything.
No problem. We've addressed the issue, and I'm perfectly content with having addressed it. But since you mentioned political candidates, let's talk politics. Specifically, let's talk about... Now, I refer to him as the illegitimate president because there is a substantial body of evidence that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. And if this is true, then he is constitutionally disqualified from running for or serving as President of the United States, even though he was installed in that office 4 years ago. What has your own research found concerning allegations that Obama is ineligible to be president?
Thank you, Brent. Listen, I've been involved in this from day one. I have become a national recognized expert in this. I have given probably scores and scores of interviews in hundreds of markets. I've spoken in tea parties from Dallas to Florida and everywhere in between. In just 3 days, I will be in a conference in Central Florida to over 1,000 people with Lieutenant Mike Zullo, who is a friend of mine. He is the lead investigator of the Arpaio investigation. So this is the level. I've interviewed everybody from Jerome Corsi to, Mike Zullo and everyone else that's been involved in this. So there's probably very little that you could ask me that I wouldn't have a good, solid answer for. The bottom line is this. I am not a sensationalist. I know this is a sensational topic. I'm not self-promoting. There's nothing in this for me. The only dog that I have in this fight is truth. I want our constitutional republic preserved. If I discover, and I've said this from the beginning, if I discover with hard evidence that Barack Obama is constitutionally eligible to hold the office, I will announce it from the rooftops. I will shout it from the rooftops that he is eligible, and here is the evidence. The problem, Brent, is that as of today, 4 years into his presidency, there is more legally documented, more researched, more investigative documented evidence that he is not born in the United States than there is that he was born in the United States. Now, if that is true, then we have a constitutional travesty of historical, unprecedented proportions upon our hands. That means if he was not born in the United States, and thus far all the evidence points that he was not, that means that we have a foreign usurper in the White House. We have a foreign usurper as commander-in-chief of the American military forces, the number one superpower of the world. We have a foreign usurper that is using the American economy, the American military, to bring about a Muslim uprising in the Middle East and perhaps a war against Israel. That is a magnitude of deception that the world has never seen before. And as I said, if it proves out that he is not born in the United States, then that's what we're looking at. And right now, there is no evidence to the contrary.
Some of the evidence of Obama's ineligibility includes his grandmother's eyewitness testimony to his birth. She was there. The airline that his mother wanted to fly to Hawaii on refused her passage because they were afraid she would give birth during the flight. That's documented. Kenyan officials have been recorded as admitting that it is a well-known fact that he was born in Kenya and that the place of his birth is some kind of landmark there. His father was documented as a British citizen, meaning he could not be a natural-born U.S. citizen. Now, in the face of all this evidence, why has this issue remained buried for so many years?
Yeah. Well, you've asked the million-dollar question, and I think it's multifaceted. You gave several strings of the evidence. Let me remind you that his own publishers for 16 years put in print that he was born in Kenya. Obama signed off on it. Obama agreed. Listen, I'm the author of a best-selling book, an internationally best-selling book. My bio is in there. I had to approve that. The publishers are printing it. They're publishing it. They're distributing it all over the world. I have to approve and to admit to what is in my bio. Obama did the same thing for 16 years, and for 16 years his bio said, with his permission and his publisher's printing, that he was born in Kenya. So, all of the evidence points that way. And what was the question? I'm so sorry. I had to add that, and then you asked the question.
Yeah,
what was
the question is simply, there's more. There's the Occidental University
yes.
Fulbright scholarship that's only issued to foreign citizens, all of that. In the face of the mounting evidence, why has the issue remained buried for so many years?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry that I lost track of that, but there's just so much. The answer is multifaceted. We do know several things. First of all, it appears that there has been a concerted effort for decades to get a man like this in the White House. And so with that, there has been huge financial backing. There has been a network. And I know people say, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, all crime starts with a conspiracy. The theory is just determining what has happened. And as a law enforcement officer, I've done that for many years. So there has been a long-time network of power and money towards this. Media over the last 50 years has swayed way to the left, way to the socialist left, so they are complicit. They've been actively involved for half a century or more. The socialists and the progressives have been actively involved in placing strategic people in Congress, even under the guise of being conservative. We call them rhinos all the time, but there are many who are in as Republicans or independents who went in on the conservative ticket but have proven to be very, very progressive. There's been a concerted effort for decades, and it's been going on under our nose. And, you say, well, what have the conservative, freedom-loving people been doing? Well, we've been going to work. We've been raising our children. We've been living the American dream, and slowly but surely it's being snatched out from underneath us. And I think a lot of America is beginning to wake up, Brent, thanks to programs like yours. But that's what's happening.
Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio established a posse to investigate this matter. They concluded that the documents represented as Obama's official birth certificate were forgeries. As far as you know, has there been any further action taken as a result of the Joe Arpaio posse's findings?
As far as I know, not yet. As I said, I will be in conference with Lieutenant Mike Zula, who's the lead investigator, in just a few days. He and I will be having some private meetings, and perhaps I will gain some more insight. But right now, please know this. Arpaio's investigation has been two-pronged. It's been a total now of 10 months. The first one was 6 months. The second pronged investigation, they sent investigators to Hawaii, and another 4 months of investigation, and so there have been 2 news conferences at which they have proven categorically, legalistically, undeniably, that the birth certificate that Obama proffered is an absolute fake and forgery. On top of that, just a few days ago, an Israeli scientific website, the premier scientific website of Israel, the investigators with that organization posted on their website, and it was in the headlines of Drudge, that Israel is now officially declaring Obama's birth certificate to be an absolute forgery. So it has been proven over and over again by law enforcement and even international concerns, but as far as taking it forward, they haven't. I mean, the Secretary of State of Arizona is refusing to ban Obama from the ballot regardless of the evidence. So what can Sheriff Arpaio do about that? Nothing. Congress is refusing to take it up in light of all of this insurmountable evidence. What can Sheriff Arpaio do about that? Nothing. Federal law enforcement is refusing to deal with it. What can Sheriff Arpaio do about that? Nothing. So right now, nothing else has happened except for the fact that legitimate law enforcement agencies and international investigators have proven to the world that the man sitting in the White House has presented a forged document as his identifying birth certificate.
And we had Mike Zullo on the show here as well. So, yes, I'm glad to hear that you're going to be speaking with him in the next few days. And on top of all those that you mentioned, there's also the courts. Numerous court cases have been filed concerning the Obama eligibility issue. Many of these were filed by extremely credible individuals, including high-ranking military officers, former UN Ambassador Alan Keyes, noted attorney Phil Berg, congressional candidate and attorney Dr. Orly Tates, and many, many others. Nevertheless, every one of these cases has been thrown out on technical grounds. Why is the judicial system so frightened of enjoining this issue in the courts?
Well, I'll remind you of this, Brent, and you probably will remember this when I say it. About a year and a half ago now, Major General Paul Vallely went on a national circuit on talk radio and revealed, he did this for weeks until somebody finally shut him down, and all of a sudden he just kind of disappeared from the radar. But for weeks, he went on the talk radio circuit and proclaimed to the world that he knew for a fact, for a military fact and a governmental fact, that the FBI knows that Obama is ineligible, and that key congressional investigators know that Obama is ineligible, but they are terrified of, quote, and this is what Paul Vallely said, General Vallely said, the FBI, federal law enforcement, and Congress is terrified of black backlash across the nation should they put this first black president out of office. I have more confidence in the black population of our nation than that, but that's what General Paul Vallely proclaimed for weeks about a year and a half ago.
Interesting. Why hasn't Mitt Romney raised the issue of Obama's constitutional ineligibility? It would seem to me that's an obvious issue to raise in a current campaign.